Hey, it's Candy. Did you know that I have a quiz to help coaches choose their niche? Yeah, I do. It's super popular and it has been taken more than 20,000 times. This is a fun quiz that takes you about 2 minutes to do, and it will probably give you way more clarity on choosing your best coaching niche. So now, whether you say niche or niche, it's going to work for you. And if you're a coach and you have been stuck in niche indecision, wondering what to do, then you should take my quiz and find out what you learn. You can take the quiz today at coachnichequiz.com. That's coachnichequiz.com. Okay, let's dive into this week's episode. Welcome to She Coaches Coaches. I'm your host, Candy Motzek, and I'm going to help you find the clarity, confidence, and courage to become the coach that you are meant to be. If you're a new coach, or if you've always wanted to be a life coach, then this is the place for you. We're going to talk all about mindset and strategies and how to, because step by step only works when you have the clarity, courage, and confidence to take action. Let's get started. Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of She Coaches Coaches. I've got a special guest here. She is someone that I have just met a couple of weeks ago, and I really enjoyed our conversation. And so I thought, if I like talking to her, you guys are going to love to hear from her as well. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Trish Murray, and she is a soul and business consultant, leading, teaching, and inspiring conscious entrepreneurs to find their way into this new age and improve their business by integrating strategy, structure, and soul. Trish weaves 25 years in strategic business and marketing roles for businesses such as Harley-Davidson, VEA office professionals, and soul-centered solopreneurs in with degree studies in psychology and specialized insights from human design and the Hermetic tradition to restore the relationship between our unique soul style and a business of tomorrow. Trish is the host of the New Age Tour Guide podcast on YouTube, and she's a best-selling co-author of Heal 2.0 and Business, Life, and the Universe, and currently lives a gypsy nomad lifestyle between the West Coast of Canada and the Rocky Mountains, also of Canada, where she finds small spots to kayak on big lakes and bikes the quiet paths of Canada's natural parks. Trish, welcome to the show. So interested in having you.
Oh, Candy, thank you. Thank you so much. I was just listening to that. I got to get a shorter bio.
But why? But why? It's
I
an
don't know. It
interesting
just felt
bio.
like, okay, well, that's good. If it's interesting, that's one thing. If it just feels like, okay, when are we going to get to the conversation part? That was
No,
what I
it
was like,
actually
when are we
every
getting to the
piece of it made
conversation?
me go, "Oh, that's interesting. I want to ask a question about that." And I really like this thing that you talk about having us being a soul and business consultant, and I'll tell
Mhm.
you why. I just read it again and heard it as I was reading it out loud a little bit differently, and so for years I was the business plus soul coach. So it was like trying to get this meld of business and soul together. And so then when I saw that, I was like, oh, there it is. It's that thing, right? And I think that that actually pertains to what we were going to talk about today. But before we go
Mhm.
there, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. What brings
Mhm.
you to this spot in your life? What, like, how did you get here?
A million rabbit holes and just as many red pills. Um, well, short version of that. Somewhere in around 2012, I had been in the corporate world as a marketing and business strategist for probably close to, I'm going to say 15 years. And somewhere in around 2012, and I attribute this actually to like the Mayan calendar. The Mayan, there was a Mayan prophecy that the world was going to end in 2012. I think my world ended in 2012 because I went on a whole like eat, pray, love journey after that. And like I said, a million rabbit holes, a million red pills. And really what I think started this off was in 2012. I remember saying to one of my best friends, who I actually worked with at the time, my we were just sitting around having a glass of wine one day, and I said, it just all feels so soulless to me now. Like, and I don't know whether I was referring to specifically the work, a project, the business, the whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember using this word soulless. And I spent, you know, probably a good 6 months wrestling with myself about whether I was going to stay or whether I was going to go, because, I had an ownership stake in a business at the time, and I had invested 15 years of my life building this business that I had now become an owner in, and so it wasn't an easy decision. Obviously, you're walking away from everything that would be markers of security, right? And being very stable, right? And you're kind of setting off in this direction of I have no idea what's going to happen. And but I couldn't get past this soulless piece for me. And the more that I've spent time working with a lot of the spiritual traditions and the tools like human design and those kinds of things, I have really come to understand why that was such a driving motivation for me. Like everything about what I've learned about myself so far is that there was just no way I could stay, even though I was having this wrestling match. So that's a little bit about what set me off, and then I went through quite a number of different pivots and iterations. I had a little yoga business because I was done with business as soon as I left the corporate world. I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm done with that. And so I started a little yoga studio in Calgary, and I had that for I'm going to say 3 or 4 years. And I shut that down just before COVID. I think that that was an intuitive move for me. Um, and then but gradually started to really feel myself pulled back toward the business community, but not in the way that I was doing it before. Like, it just could not be that way. It had to be something that was a greater or stronger or um, more clear reflection of, like, who I am at a soul level, what I am here to do at a soul level, right? Because I think we all have this soul path that we've come to walk. We all have this soul purpose, this idea of, our souls have come here to grow, and our business, our work, our careers gets to be one part of how that happens. So that, in a hopefully a nutshell.
I love it. It's the hero's journey, right? All over again,
Yes.
right? And sometimes there is that kind of wilderness time, right? And we know that we have to change. We don't know exactly what has to change, but it just can't stay like this. It's just not going to happen, or who knows what will happen. And then sometimes it takes a while. And I don't know about you, but I'm used to, like, if I want it, it should happen now. Like, that's it, right? Like, I don't have a
Yeah.
tolerance for that. I appear very
Yeah.
patient on the outside, but inside I'm like, no, come on, let's go. Right. So
I think we come by that honestly. I think that's really just the culture that we live in. We've been trained to expect it to happen very quickly. And when it doesn't, and it often doesn't, like I've often said to people, like, if you want to, first of all, if you want to know yourself, start a business. If you want to understand how the universe operates, start a business. And like all of it can come through this experience of what we would describe as the work that we're bringing into the world, right? I think all of that can kind of become very teachable through that particular realm.
mm-hmm.
And patience is actually a huge part of my human design, and so I'm really loving that part, Candy.
Oh, great.
Oh, good, more opportunities to learn patience.
She says with her teeth gritted.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a whole bunch there about patience, but we're not going to go talk about that. We had spoken briefly before I hit record, and you have this really interesting place of talking about the end game of a coaching business, the end game of the purpose of a coach. Let's dive in there. Can you describe
Right.
it a little bit? Yeah.
Well, let's start with end game because I think sometimes that gets a little bit confusing for people. You could think about it from, the word itself, I think, comes from the game of chess, right? And in chess, the end game is like the final series that bring the game to close. Yeah, so like in the game of chess, which is where the end game comes from, this idea of the end game, it's the final series of moves that bring the game to completion. And so when I'm talking with people, a lot of the time, like especially when we're working on their soul vision, their CEO soul vision, um, it's really about like when you get to the end of this game that we're playing, and we're all playing a game, right? I know it sounds frivolous to say that. I don't mean it to be. I mean it to be just understand that, kind of all of life is a game, right? And we're learning how to play it to the best of our ability. But when you get to the end of the game, what do you want to have created? What do you want to have experienced all the way along? And where do you want that to lead you to? So I also think about end game as what is your end aim? What is your end aim? What do you want to leave behind
Mm-hmm.
when your time here is done? And that could be legacy stuff that people are really thinking about. It could be, all the way along that they are just really interested in being able to maintain a lifestyle, right? And especially if you've come out of a kind of an environment that's caused you to work a tremendous amount. Lifestyle can be a major driver for some people, right? Other people have an end game of wanting to be able to share their expertise, right? That becomes something really important to them. Um, so with that in mind, there's been something that I've been working around, and I'll probably do a podcast with a little bit more about this. But one of the things that's really kind of hit my radar is as we are moving into this quote new age, and a lot of the people in the woo world will call it the Aquarian age, and whatever language that you want to put around this, the reality is, in my view, that we are moving through a major period of transformation on the planet. Humanity is going through some really big leaps in terms of becoming what the next best version of ourselves looks like. And so I just use this new age conversation because it's just an easy way to talk about it. But with that, we are coming out of something that I'm kind of defining as the material era, and we're moving into something that feels a lot more like the quantum era. And I think if you are listening to this, you might be able to identify with that because you will probably have been hearing people talk about quantum physics, quantum mechanics, a lot of quantum language, quantum entanglement, right? There's a lot of conversation happening around that area, which ties back to quantum physics. But on the other side of it is, there's just new ways that we're talking about almost everything. And, I'm just going to stop there because I could just keep going and going and going. But
Yeah.
tie this back to this idea that I've been playing with, and it's not just for coaches, but I am going to kind of zero in on coaches because that's your primary audience here. But in general, if you think about the end game in the material era was all about money. It was
Mm-hmm.
all about whether or not I had enough money. If I had money, I was an influencer. If I have money, I have a better quality of life. And it's not to say that any of those things are not true, but that was the primary driver in the material era. As we move into the quantum era, a lot of what I've been, pulling in from various sources is really suggesting that our primary driver is going to be well-being. going to be freedom and flexibility, and it's going to be this feeling like contribution and fulfillment, right? And I know intellectually we get that. In fact, intellectually, and maybe even at a heart level, we're like, yeah, I want that. But yet we still have this culture that is so materially driven that it creates this cognitive dissonance, let's say. We just like, things just aren't adding up. We hear it, we feel it, we want it, but we're not seeing it necessarily reflected in the macro consistently or authentically. I think that's a really fun one to play with. So here's my current thought right now is to be able to change the end game, change our own individual end game. Like I'm not talking about trying to change the end game for the coaching industry. Sweet baby Jesus, if we can't do that, let's just focus on our end game. And what if, I would love it. I would love it if everybody who's listening right now were to just consider, what if our end game became essentially putting ourselves out of business in whatever field you're in and whatever work you're doing right now. What if the end game became, by the time I'm leaving this planet, there is no one left for me to coach, because I have found and like funneled my process or my gifts and talents into absolutely everybody who I came to serve at a soul level. That becomes the end game. And here's why I think this is an interesting conversation, because if you start to entertain the idea that I am here, first of all, to be of service to a community of people, and that might even have been sort of, I don't want to say predetermined, but shaped before we even got here. We knew who we were coming to be of service to. And this isn't about volume. This isn't about going and grabbing more people. It's about going and finding the people, the community that we are here, who we are so uniquely gifted to serve and to support and to move forward in their journey. And it's not about trying to sustain a business in the way that we've come to believe, right? Like recurring revenue, all of those drivers. And again, I'm kind of getting a little bit muddy in this, but the real conversation becomes, my job is to put myself out of business. My work here, my purpose is to make sure that I find my people and pour out my gifts and my talents into them and help them reach a state of completion with me, so that they almost move beyond coaching. They have all of the tools that they need. And I think that this is possible, Candy, because as I've reflected back on my journey, and there's been certain opportunities to go back into coaching experiences with people, and I've, kind of unpacked a little bit of their process. I'm like, no, you know what? I am complete in that area. I need to go back and revisit all the things that I've already learned, but I don't need to go back into coaching. I'm beyond coaching. I'm in a place where I actually need to start to really embody what I've already been given.
So let me just pause you there. There's a couple of things that you've said that really stuck with me. And so the first is this leaving, as we evolve out of the material era and move into more of the quantum era. And the way that I characterize the material era is the bumper sticker. The one who dies with the most toys wins, right? Like that is, as you said that, I was like, oh, I know that, right? And so where we've got the nuance is that currently our definition of money related to business specifically, but money in general, is that it gives us privilege. It gives us the money allows us to have freedom. It's the tool
Yeah.
that facilitates the
Mhm.
freedom. It's also a measure of the value that we have created in the world. And while I still believe that some of those things are true, there is the nuances in the deeper, or maybe it's not deeper, maybe it's alternate use for money, you know,
Yeah.
and now it's more the concept that you're bringing forward is if we go with the idea that we are placed on this planet, we've chosen to be here at this time in this space and do this work. And I often say that I think that coaching is a calling. So,
I
if
agree.
you are called to be a coach, then there are people, a group of people, who knows how many? It might be one, it might be five, it might be 500, it might be 5,000. Doesn't honestly matter, that we have
Yeah.
a contract with, a soul agreement with. And our role is to help them, to support them, to pour into them, so that then they can create what they have decided to be here for.
Right.
Right?
I 100% agree with everything that you've just summarized there.
Okay. So then the other part that's interesting, well, there's lots that's interesting, but okay, slight change of tone. How long do you think it's going to take for this to transform? Because
Oh.
we have been talking about the age of Aquarius
Mhm.
and moving out of this material into the quantum since the 60s, like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's 60 years ago.
Well, I'm
What do
gonna
you think?
push that number even further, Candy. So first of all, when you like, I'm not gonna get into like the whole like astrology piece, but in astrology, when we talk about age is shifting, that's like a 22, almost 2200 year cycle.
Okay.
So it's a long cycle. We're coming out of the age of Pisces. And my opinion, I actually did a podcast on this, Welcome to the Age of Aquarius, where I talk about, I think that the age of Pisces got completely derailed in so many ways. Like, and we are still living in the hangover of the age of Aries, which is all like military
Oh yeah.
culture. You listen to the language of business, it's about competition and
Yeah.
competitive drivers and it just all of that. So yes, from the 60s, we were talking about the age of Aquarius, but I was just reading something as I'm working on this conversation that in astrology, the planet of Uranus was discovered in 1781, and a lot of people in astrology believe that that heralded the beginning of the age of Aquarius. So here we are, 2024, and um, it's challenging. It is so challenging for us to consider that we are at the very beginning. We're still at the very beginning of this new age, and yet we're 300 years into it, right? It's so hard for us to be able to see our existence, our place in the cosmos through this really broad perspective. But for me personally, it has like created so much peace of mind and calm for me when I look at the chaos that kind of unfolds at times in our world, like right now, gosh,
Mm-hmm.
so much going on. And I keep coming back to, yes, but we're in the middle of it. We're changing cycles, right? There's a new cycle unfolding here. And of course, at the end of an old cycle, there's going to be disruption and tension and friction as we start to move forward. So anyway, la 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 la.
So no, but this is important because the concept is like there's my ego saying, "Come on, how long is it going to take?" Again, it's about the patience thing. But remembering that the span of my life and the span of the world is a
Yeah,
small drop. And that goes for all of us, no matter how vital our soul's purpose is, right?
yeah,
Like
Yeah.
each of those things, they almost feel, it's like that paradox, right? Like my life is so short, and yet my purpose is as important as anybody's, right?
And like if and this is an even more expansive invitation for all of us, is to consider that we are an irreplaceable part of the cosmic plan. If we weren't here,
Mm-hmm.
the cosmic plan would not be coming together the way that it is right now. And even that's hard to see. Even that's hard to see, that there is a plan. Um, and the divine is working through so many different um, pathways to bring things forward. But our contribution is so vital, and that's either exciting for people or it's going to feel overwhelming for people.
or
And
maybe or maybe
I
a little bit of both, right?
or
Like,
maybe a little bit of both. Yeah.
like we evolve and we can start to get used to these ideas. So
Yeah.
let's go back to the idea of the end game, not of the coaching
Yeah.
industry, because the coaching industry is so new and is still so much in flux. Like I could ask 100 people what a coach is, and we'd each have a different answer. And who knows, we're all
Yeah.
probably right in some
Yeah.
way, and we're wrong in
Yeah.
some ways too, right?
Yeah.
But I think this idea is really interesting, that the end game of our coaching business is to have coached everybody who we were meant to be in relationship with.
Yeah. And to do so completely,
Yeah.
right? And I don't mean like perfectly. I mean, we've left it all on the field
Yeah.
with every single person that we were here to pour our gifts and talents into. We have done our work so completely that when we go on to whatever happens after this, there is literally no one left that that to be coached. Our people are beyond coaching.
Hmm.
We have moved them. We have moved them so profoundly beyond the point where they feel like they need to. Because I don't know about you, Candy, but I mean, I've certainly seen this. I've experienced this, and I'm not a coach. I don't identify as a coach at all. But I've worked with coaches. I've I've like worked personally with coaches. I've worked professionally with coaches, and it just could feel like you could be in this hamster wheel of coaching, going
Mm-hmm.
from one coach to the next coach to the next coach to the next coach. They've got something that I need to go and work, right? They've got the pack. I need to get inside their package. I need to know what they're doing. It could be crazy making
Yeah.
for some
Yeah.
people, and I know it was for me for a period of time, like 2 or 3 years. I just didn't feel like I I, I I felt like somebody else had all the answers that I needed, right? And I don't begrudge any of those experiences because they were beautiful. They poured into me. But when I finally kind of got working with one for a longer period of time, that's where I started to really feel like, okay, I'm I'm making the progress that I need to be making now.
Yeah. And I see this, I mean, I've experienced that as well, where it's this looking outside myself for the answer,
Mm,
as opposed to looking to a partner to discover my own answer, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so each of us comes with our own answer, and at the heart of it, pure coaching is that conversation that allows you to find your own knowing. And so there's something interesting about this idea about having, I mean, the simple version is having coached everyone that you were supposed to coach as fully and completely as you were capable of doing it. And in that is the connection is that in that it is that co-creative relationship, right? Like the coach
Yeah.
says the thing, and sometimes I'm like, oh, gulp, I know what I got to say. I don't want to say that. I know what I got to say. I don't want to say that. But the coach shows up courageously and the client shows up courageously, all in service of the client, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when the client is fully able to, it's not just receive that, because sometimes I'm like, I fight with my coaches. I'm like, I don't like that. No, you can't make me do that, right? Like,
Yeah, I get it.
there's this place of, it's a courageous relationship on both sides.
Yeah.
So the the way that you've described it, the part that I can't quite get my words around is that there is the pouring out of the coach, courageous pouring out service of the coach with those people that we are meant to be in relationship with. And then it is at the same time, it's refilling from the relationship, but also refilling from the self. Like the client refills from the relationship and refills from themselves, and ultimately connects with their internal source more
Yeah.
than anything.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
sense?
And there's two things that kind of pop as you were talking is, you know, pouring out or not, and that's even a kind of a challenging imagery in our mind,
Yeah.
because I know a lot of coaches that just keep pouring and pouring and pouring,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not filling themselves back up. And so I would invite anybody who's listening to be pouring from an overflowing cup, as
Yes.
opposed to topping yourself back up, pouring it out,
Yeah.
topping yourself back up, right? Getting to a place where you've got a practice in place for yourself, where you are pouring from the overflow, right? From the overflow, as opposed to, somebody said the other day, pouring from the saucer instead of the cup,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
Um, but then, there was something else that really tweaked for me as you were talking about this, because, we kind of, and this comes right down to the heart of the relationship journey that we have with people. There are people who are going to come in and they're going to take a little bit from us. And that is us having served them completely. And then there's going to be other people who are going to go a little bit longer in that relationship with us. And then they're going to, move on, and they're going to go and do whatever they're going to do. And we will have served them completely. In that book, The Four Agreements, he talks about always do your best. Right. And I think that this is the invitation for us, whether you're a coach, no matter what kind of work you're doing, it's at whatever stage you get to with someone, do you feel like you are leaving them complete?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a tough one, because I know from my own practice that, there are people who I don't feel have reached the fullness of their potential in what we can do together. But that's different than, for me, hearing them say, I feel like this is complete. Client says, I feel like this is complete. And I look back and say, okay, I feel like I've given you everything that I can
Mm-hmm.
for where you are then. Right. So there's this, considering like that relationship journey. And some people, I talk about this, some people will come for what you do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you're thinking about your value, right, some people come for what you do. They hear about what you do. They're, oh, that's interesting. Other people, or people in general, will come back because of how you do it, how
Mm-hmm.
you do it so differently, uniquely. That's a huge part of our value, our core value to the marketplace. But then there's going to be those people who are going to stay, and they're going to become the ambassadors for you. And it's all because of who we are, right? Those are the people that will wind up going the distance with, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not to say that we haven't served those people who came because of how we do it. They stay maybe less time way,
Well,
or
and it's not
they invest less
transactional,
money.
right? Like,
Wow.
so it's not time, it's not based on time, it's not based on the transaction, it's not based on the, my ego's definition of what is serving or not serving. It's what is in that relationship that is needed at this time. right?
Yeah.
Like some people might just listen to this podcast episode and that is enough. They've
And we will
received
have served
something.
them
Exactly.
to the best of our ability
Mm-hmm.
in this moment. I 100%.
Exactly.
And I got to say, I don't think I've been in a conversation with someone who has used the language of relationship as much as you do, and I love it.
Oh, good.
I absolutely love it. Like, you want to talk about new age stuff, it's all about the relationship. The quantum
Yeah.
era is going to be all about the relationship, which is
Yeah.
why, to your point, it's not transactional. It's not going to be driven by the money. It's not going to be driven by trying to achieve a seven-figure business. That's not the goal.
Mm-hmm.
If you achieve a seven-figure business because you are moving out in service, because you are building those kinds of relationships, because you're reimagining how you can bring people together and bring your gifts and talents to them, and that gets you to a seven-figure business, god, that's awesome. That just means you get to serve more, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But when because I was just looking at this, like, you see so many ads on social media about, especially geared towards coaches, and I don't know why I get them, because I, I don't do
It's
anything
because
in
you
that
clicked one
language.
and they have you
I
forever.
suppose. I suppose. Hey, yeah. I just
Do
saw a
not
meme
ever
about
click it.
that.
Do not pause in front of it. Just keep
No, just
moving.
keep scrolling. It's like, don't make eye contact.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So, but
Well,
I do think that there's a big difference in just terms of what's the motivation. So back to, what is your end game? What is
yes.
your end game in this quantum era? The quantum era is inviting us to redesign our end game around relationship, like you've been talking about throughout this whole conversation, like, and true, real relationship, honoring the rules of relationship, the way we relate, the way that we connect with people, and how relationships operate. Sometimes they last for a day, an hour, a year. Sometimes people are with us for 10 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that's a big one. And then, the other side of this is, well-being. Back to this idea of, what do we need to feel like we are well? We are well, like our being is well supported. And of course, yes, money is still in there. I don't think that money's going to go away in this quote new age. I think it's
No,
just a
I
really
agree
efficient
because it's still a tool.
form.
I mean, we're not going
Yeah,
to go back to bartering chickens and, and cows and all of that. It's a
right,
tool that works. So,
right.
so we would continue to use it. I've really enjoyed the conversation and I want to make sure that we wrap this up really well.
Perfect.
What, let's, I don't know if you've got this in your head or not, but what's the one question that you would leave a coach with that they can reflect on and ask themselves so that they are taking the next step?
Well, in the spirit of the end game, it's funny that as soon as you said that, I was like, a book popped into my head called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And he describes the difference between businesses that play the finite game and businesses that play the infinite game. And the infinite game, in my opinion, is a game that you play for the pure love of the game. So my one question is, are you moving down this path of coaching because you believe that you are truly going to love it, and that you could see yourself playing this game for the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, depending on where you are in your career? Or are you motivated by something else?
Mm-hmm.
Are you being motivated by something else? That would be my one question.
Yeah, and either answer is fine. It just
Sure.
helps them, it just helps the individual to know. And, and so then I would kind of layer on, and are you satisfied with your answer? Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what, are you playing this game or parts of this game and parts of this game? And are you
Yeah.
satisfied there? And if you
Yeah.
are, excellent. And if you're not, take the next step. And
Yeah.
so much of that is listening inside, and maybe working with your own coach, because
Yeah.
that's that connection on the other side, right? Like you need other people to support you in your growth. too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Trish, I have really loved this conversation. It's been
Thanks,
great.
Candy. So have I.
And I know the listeners are going to say, like, how can I find out more about Trish? So share with us. How can we find out more about you?
Well, I am you can find me on LinkedIn, Trish Murray, and you can find me on Instagram under Soul Style Trish. Um, and I have a bi-monthly newsletter if you're interested in just following along on the podcast. That's pretty much what I share through that. And that's available at www.soulstyle.me.
Awesome.
Soulstyle.me.
And I'll make sure to put all of that in the episode notes, as well as the link to the Simon Sinek book if they want to have a little bit more information there. Gosh, I appreciate having you on the show. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
I love
everyone.
being here.
Oh, I'm so glad. All right. I am so glad that you listened to our conversation. I hope you take that question, that final question, and reflect on it for yourself. Are you on path for yourself? Are you satisfied with the answer? And I would love to invite you to come back and be part of the conversation again next week. Have a great week. Thanks again for listening today. Please hop on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Also, I would love to hear from you. Did something that I say resonate? What else would you like to learn about? Click the link in the player and leave a comment on the post. This is going to give me great ideas for future episodes so I can help you best. Join me again next week for more coaching, support, and teaching to help you become the confident coach you are meant to be. Hey, it's Candy. Did you know that I have a quiz to help coaches choose their niche? Yeah, I do. It's super popular and it has been taken more than 20,000 times. This is a fun quiz that takes you about 2 minutes to do, and it will probably give you way more clarity on choosing your best coaching niche. So now, whether you say niche or niche, it's going to work for you. And if you're a coach and you have been stuck in niche indecision, wondering what to do, then you should take my quiz and find out what you learn. You can take the quiz today at coachnichequiz.com. That's coachnichequiz.com. Okay, let's dive into this week's episode.